Yellowstone has been one of the most popular shows in the world since it started airing in 2018, but it looks like its own prequel series, 1923, might have taken the spotlight, packed with an insanely talented cast, an intriguing story, and some of that old school Sheridan magic. It looks like Yellowstone fans are in for a treat. On that note, let's look at reasons why 1923 will be a huge TV game changer. First up, Harrison Ford as Jacob Dutton. Introducing a series with a pretty good character is probably one of the best weapons a TV show can have. It's the quickest way to turn viewers into ride or dies. Now, we're not here to put down Kevin Costner. We love Dances with Wolves, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Field of Dreams, just to name a few of his great movies. But let's be honest, no one can beat Harrison Ford. He's Han Solo and Indiana Jones, for heaven's sake. With just those two roles, the actor has earned a place in the Hollywood pantheon that is all his own. And now he's playing Jacob Dutton, an ancestor of Kevin Costner's character. There is really no question about who was the most powerful man to ever lead the Dutton family. Literally, in the first episode, we see the grizzled face of Jacob Dutton, his twitching frown framed by canyon-deep lines, and his cowboy hat crawling with locusts. He looks out from a horse at a field full of dead cattle and swarms of flies. It looks like overgrazing, drought, and disease are already signs of the Dust Bowl. Elsa tells us in a clunky but informative voiceover that Jacob moved to Montana years ago to save his brother's family after John died, and he built an empire there. Even a century before Costner's Twilight-era political maneuvering on Yellowstone, it's already falling apart. Coming up, Helen Mirren as Cara Dutton. Helen Mirren is the other big name in 1923. Like Ford, she's a legendary character who will definitely appeal to both older and younger viewers. This is honestly a smart move by one of the most popular TV franchises on air right now. Right off the bat, in the first episode, we see her intimidating presence, and it's clear she was born for this role. In the show, her character is a quiet force of nature who listens to men talk about doing violent things, hiding from them the fact that she also has a violent nature kept in secret. In the first scene of 1923, she plays the matriarch, Cara Dutton, who confronts and kills a suspected thief. It's a violent act that, most importantly, no one sees, because Cara will have to act more subtly when men are watching. As the livestock commissioner, Jacob is in charge of rounding up the animals and taking care of business in town. Cara, who's getting older, still takes care of the homestead and enjoys the quiet freedom she has on the ranch without her husband. It seems like Mirren brings out the quiet humanity and strength of the matriarch to make Cora feel more alive and emotional. When you look at the main characters like Jacob and Cara, it's pretty clear 1923 works better as a family drama, and it would be good to learn more about Jacob and Cora's history as a couple. Together, Ford and Mirren's witty banter brings a few laughs to an otherwise tight and tense environment. Moving on to Jerome Flynn as Banner Creighton. Jerome Flynn is another star who made the cast of 1923 even more star-studded. Flynn will be playing Banner Creighton, who is described as having a hard-headed Scottish brog and being the leader of the local sheepmen. We think Jerome Flynn is a strong candidate in this series because of how great he was as the lovable sellsword Bronn in Game of Thrones. It's not clear if he'll bring that same kind of brash, don't give a care charm to his 1923 role of Banner Creighton, but that's fine with us too. We'd love to see him back on our screens any day of the week. No doubt, Flynn is an amazing actor, but it's also interesting to see a different side of him in 1923. He seems pretty upset and done for. Even though Taylor Sheridan's neo-western Yellowstone was pretty dark and cynical, 1923 is set in a much more depressing and dark time. Sheridan's universe is already quite interesting, but finding out where the Duttons and the Yellowstone Ranch came from is sure to take it to new heights, and we'd really like to see how Flynn's character fits into all of that. What's more, a fascinating time in history. The thing that a lot of people are excited about is the interesting timeline 1923 takes us. Yellowstone is set in the present day, and its original spin-off, 1883, took place in a time in the Wild West that has been shown in movies a lot over the past few decades. So it's nice to see that the new show takes us to a time that hasn't been shown as much. This is a time in American history when the mythical Wild West was long gone, and settlers had to decide how they would live with the people and land around them. In this show, Sheridan is building a huge libertarian opera in which owning land is the highest goal a man can strive for, and taking control of his American destiny makes him a target for those who don't want to work as hard. They are about men who try to put order in a world that isn't under control. Most of the time, when things change, they react violently, and right now in history, things are going to change. The gap between America's growing frontier and its cities is at its wildest, and disasters like the Great Depression, famine, and another world war are just around the corner, followed by the parallels of 1923 versus 2022. It's no surprise that we'll dive into any show as soon as we can relate to it. So, it looks like there are amazing similarities between the struggles shown on the show and the ones the world is facing right now. There's no denying that the world is facing some pretty big problems right now, and it looks like many of them will still be around in 1923. This could give us some useful information about where we are now. Even though we like to think we've made a lot of progress in the last century, the truth is that we still have to deal with widespread illness, droughts that make history, the tragedy of war, and high levels of civil unrest and racial tensions. If the trailers are any indication, 1923 will cover all of this and more, giving us a better idea of who we are by showing us how our ancestors lived. Up next, the show does an amazing job at showing how the indigenous people were treated. Sheridan hasn't been afraid to talk about how indigenous people have been treated in the past. In 1923, he takes this theme a step further by introducing Tiana Rainwater, a strong-willed young woman who's forced to go to one of the horrible residential schools of that time. When Tiana acts out, she gets in trouble with her cruel nun teacher, Sister Mary, and her even more cruel headmaster, Father Renau, who has his own weird way of showing his power over both women. Sheridan continues to walk a very thin line between telling the truth about the killing and mistreatment of indigenous people in history and using this information to tell a story. Even though it's important to show these hard parts of American history, these scenes in the school are deeply unsettling and uncomfortable to watch, so much so that they feel like a whole different show. From the first episode alone, it's still not clear how all of the storylines will eventually come together, or even if all of the storylines work. But if Sheridan's prequel is done right, it can be a worthy star vehicle for its large ensemble. Not to mention why 1923 can beat Yellowstone and 1883. The real reason why there are so many talented people in the cast of 1923 is that the timeline and setting set the stage for a much more complex, interesting, and much darker story than both Yellowstone and 1883. In fact, 1923 combines the best parts of these two previous shows. During this decade, the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch is already well established, but instead of Paradise Valley's beautiful suburban landscape, most of Montana is still at the mercy of the elements and frontier justice. Even though Yellowstone may not end in season 5, and 1883 season 2's story will feature the greatest frontier lawmen in history, 1923 combines what made these shows so popular to tell the rest of the Dutton story. You can see how ambitious a project like 1923 is just by watching the trailer. Sheridan also said how much season 1 of 1923 cost to make, and it was as much as a big budget movie. It seems like 1923 is a better version of Yellowstone because it is set in a harsher world than 1883. The prequel will also explain how the Duttons went from being pioneering settlers in 1883 to becoming scheming politicians in Yellowstone. In terms of the future of the prequel, even if the first season lasts a decade, 1923 will still have about 90 years of Dutton history to explore in any future seasons. Finally, there's more to come. 1923 has only just premiered, and there's already so much to unpack, and the story hasn't even completely picked up yet. Not all characters have had a chance to shine yet, and we will definitely have to be patient with other characters. But if the story is this good with just a few actors that have come on screen, we can't wait to see what Sheridan does when the entire cast comes to play. Introducing the show with Helen Mirren and Harrison Ford was a good move because it now gives these new characters enough of a mystery and ties us enough so that we won't lose interest after just one episode. The hope is that Sheridan will keep going into new and exciting parts of the story that will add variety and make this new part of the Dutton legacy the best one yet. But that is a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on Sheridan's 1923? Do you think it'll end up being big? Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like these. See you in the next one.